Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XVI. This title was sent to me by Square Enix so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. As of the recording of this video, I'm sitting at about 10 hours of gameplay, give or take. There's currently 2 live streams available to you in the channel in case you want to check out some additional gameplay. And by the way, I've been adding chapters to those live streams to make them a little bit more digestible. So if you want to look at like specific boss fights that I've already fought in order to see what the gameplay of that is like, or if you want to see my reaction to a specific story beat, then make sure to check out those live streams and you will be seeing the chapters there. I still haven't done the ones for the second one, but I'm working on it right now. I just wanted to get to work on this video. And in case you're concerned about the gameplay that is being shown on screen right now, this is the gameplay for one of the very first combat sections in the game that doesn't really include a whole lot of story. And that is the reason why I picked this one. You shouldn't really be getting spoiled on anything story-wise, and there's just a couple of combat scenarios and a couple of creatures that will show up and whatnot. But if you really want to go in as blind as possible, then you're also welcome to minimize the window and just listen to the soothing sounds of my voice, because the discussion is really what is the core of this particular video. So let's get into it. What is Final Fantasy XVI like? This is a game that I've been waiting for quite some time. As a matter of fact, I've been telling people this is going to be one of the greatest Final Fantasy games ever made, if not the greatest Final Fantasy game ever made. And so far, it's been meeting up my expectations. As it turns out, it's not meeting everyone's expectations. If I'm to look online through the current discourse surrounding Final Fantasy XVI, but to be quite fair, I don't care because I really like what I'm seeing. And I knew that I was going to like it. This is a game that is being developed by one of my favorite development teams in the industry right now, which is Creative Business Unit 3, the team behind the resurrection of Final Fantasy XIV, the team that is led by Naoki Yoshida, and I just really like their work, and it is definitely reflected in this game, even though this is kind of like outside their wheelhouse, if you really think about it. They've been working a lot on Final Fantasy XIV, which is an MMORPG, a tap targeting MMORPG, and this is as far away from that as it gets. This game is a type of game that I've always used one term to describe it. This is a term that I picked up from Total Biscuit back in the day, which is a spectacle fighter. The whole purpose of this game is to kill the enemies that are on screen as stylishly as possible, making use of as many different combos as you possibly can. And let me tell you guys a little secret when it comes to these types of games. You know, games like this, this would be something like a Devil May Cry. So it is kind of like an apt comparison, even though I feel like what they are doing here is very much its own take on the Devil May Cry style, which is quite different. Like, for instance, when you're first playing through it in story mode, you're not really going to be seeing scores. You're not really going to be graded on your performance because the whole point is to get you as immersed as possible into the game. And not every place that you go to is a multi-stage of waves of enemies coming at you. It's its own take on that style. And it is a take that I personally greatly enjoy. And the secret that I wanted to tell you, that I got a little bit sidetracked here, the secret when it comes to that and me in these types of games, that I suck at them. I love playing them, but I'm really bad at them because, you know, you have a lot of complexity when it comes to doing combos and stuff like that. But I feel like with Final Fantasy XVI, it's actually one of the ones that I'm able to perform the best for some strange reason. Like, I don't know what it is about the way that they're doing the combat, but it just kind of really works for me, with me just like constantly swapping between the possible combos that you can do and all of this stuff. So I've been really having an absolute blast, and you can pretty much see it on my face if you check out any of those live streams. It's just been really, really awesome. Like, you can see it here with me just like doing the basic combo, which the interesting thing is that the core principle of the basic combo of this game is poke shelling and Monster Hunter, because like hit shell, hit shell, hit shell. It is like Chaos Slayer said that on a tweet the other day, and I most definitely agree. It's basically poke shelling, but then you have a lot more involved into it. You can go aerial, you can do all of these crazy things, but it just feels good to play. And then to back it up, it has an amazing story. Like if you've played the demo, you'll kind of know what to expect from the story. The game so far is built on top of the story that you've experienced in the demo, and it has been delivering nonstop. So I guess we'll quickly touch up on visuals to begin with, which is usually what I tend to do when I do these types of videos. I think the game looks gorgeous. It has kind of like a muted art style in a way that makes it feel very grounded when compared to, like, because you have the games that have the bright colors that you guys know that I love games with bright colors. This game feels a little bit more muted than that, and to a point where sometimes I just feel like the art style meshes itself really well with the story that it's telling and with the soundtrack and with whatever is happening on screen. It just creates something that I personally find very special. Now, I understand it's not going to be the case for everyone, and one of the things that I will definitely say is that the performance could have been a little bit better, because it seems to me like we're usually hovering around the 40 FPS range. This is just my guesstimation. You guys can check out the Digital Foundry video if you are interested in knowing the exact details, but most of the time it seems like we're going off on the 40 FPS, and I've seen people criticize this as like, oh, that it's not really properly optimized, but the difference is it feels way more stable than a lot of the other games that release and they can't really hit 60 FPS. And I don't know why that is, but what I can tell you is that it just feels solid when you're playing. Whereas, for instance, if we were to compare it to, let's say, Jedi Survivor, it felt like the game was about to explode at any second. And that is not the case here. I still haven't had any crashes or anything of that nature. Then again, I'm still only like 10 hours in, so maybe that's not a fair assessment at this point, but I'll be sure to report, because once I actually finish the game, I'll be doing like a proper, a more complete review. This is just still first impressions, but up until this point, I really like the art style. I like what the game looks like. I like the style that they're going for. I like particularly the animations. There's something about the animations in this game that just feel really special, especially with the boss fights and the cinematography and the stuff that they're doing. Because, like, you have the boss fights and the bosses are doing their moves and you're dodging and you're countering and doing all of these things, but then you have like these key moments in the fight that are these really big set pieces. And when I say big set piece, I don't mean like, oh, there's all of this crazy stuff happening, even though there are some of those. But I'm talking about even something as simple as, like, for instance, during this mission, there's a boss fight in the forest, which maybe we'll showcase throughout this video, maybe we won't. It's not really like a spoiler or anything, but during this boss fight, there are just some subtle things that happen during these set piece moments where they shift the camera perspective almost to put you in first person with your character grabbing a blade that is coming right at you, and they have you perform actions while you are doing that and then countering and back into the thing. And then there's just something about the animations in this game that, in my opinion, this is next level. This is just straight up next level. Feel free to disagree. I don't care. But that is, and I'm extremely demanding of video games when it comes to animations. I am very demanding of video games. By the way, I'm missing a lot of attacks in this monster, and I'm getting hit a lot. In case you guys are wondering, it's because I'm trying to practice parrying. Because I'm using the footage that I'm using as B-roll. I was trying to practice parrying, all right? Which is something that I'm still coming to grips with some of the stuff in combat. But overall, visuals are absolutely outstanding, and I love the animations. And so far, I think that every cutscene that I've seen is in-engine. There's really no pre-rendered cutscenes in the game that I've seen. Now that I'm thinking about it, I hadn't even thought about that. Maybe there are some later in the game or something, because like I said, I'm just 10 hours in. But so far, every single cinematic has been pre-rendered. They do the thing where once you go into cinematics, they up the textures and all that stuff. They basically put you in quality mode when you go into the cinematics, because the game does have performance mode, quality mode. And I've already spoken at length. This is not something that I like. I wish that developers would pick one mode and stuck to it. So that is one thing that I'll be like, I don't like it. And I know that there's a lot of people that disagree with me on that. And it's like, look, I don't care. I like when games have one mode and optimize for that mode, and it's whatever. But in this game, yeah, you have the quality mode, which is like 4K at 30 FPS, or you can have performance mode, which is 1440p, and that hovers between 40, 60, sometimes a little bit below 40. You know, the usual stuff that you've come to expect with these performance modes. But like I said, there's something about the frame rate here that feels solid even when it's dipping. I don't know how to explain this. It's like when in a game, when the frames, when you start suffering from frame drops, in most games it feels like complete garbage. And in this one it doesn't. That's the only way that I can describe it. And it's like, look, I've had this in plenty of games where you're going from 60 and then it goes down and it feels bad. And in this game, even though you can feel that the frame rate is not as solid as it was, but when you're in the middle of combat, it doesn't bother you at all. It actually bothers me more when I'm exploring. Like when I'm outside of combat, the drops in frame rate bother me way more. I don't know what kind of dark sorcery they're doing. I think that people were saying that, oh, they have aggressive dynamic resolution, but I don't notice it that bad. It just looks solid throughout. And you guys can check the live streams, check the footage that you're watching here. I'm just playing the game in performance mode. And it's good. And it feels good. Anyway, overall visual package, in my book, it's really great, really good. I would have preferred it to have one mode as opposed to two, because this is just something that I'm going to bring up whenever we talk about visuals in games in the future. It's just look, I want one mode, okay? One mode. When it comes to consoles, none of this quality performance. If I want to mess around with quality options, then I'll play it on PC when it's available, because this one's not. But I'll play it on PC, and then I can tweak all of the settings that I could possibly ever want. Now, in terms of sounds and soundtrack, it is giga solid. I love the fact that this game is not scared to bring the soundtrack front and center. Soken is a goddamn musical genius. Every single time that the soundtrack takes center stage, I love it, and it just hypes me up, which is really, really good when you are doing all of these battles and all of these things in the game. I just think they've done a fantastic job with that. The voice acting is also top-notch. I've been playing it in English, which, sometimes with these games, people are like, oh, you got to play the Japanese version. No, because I think even the lip syncing is done in English when it comes to Final Fantasy XVI. So it just feels really solid all around. The voice acting is excellent. It's very much like the animations. The voice acting on this game is on a completely different level. That's just my opinion on it. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it, because I already know that there's a lot of negative sentiment towards 16 for some reason in the community right now, and I can't relate. Look, I'm looking for it. There's nothing there for me to point out. The only negative thing about 16 for me right now is that I'm sitting here talking about it on this video instead of playing it, because I have to wait until tomorrow's stream to continue playing, and that's super frustrating. That's what I can tell you, because if it was up to me, I'd be playing the game right now, and it is what it is. It just feels really good to play, and I just want to keep playing it and see the story and continue to get immersed in those characters. But yeah, from sound and soundtrack, again, super solid, impeccable, and it's just, I can't believe that it gets me as hyped up as it does. It's actually surprising to me. But yeah, you'll see me on stream a lot of times get so revved up from what is happening on screen that I'll be screaming let's go. It's just it's the combination of everything. The animations, the visuals of what's happening on screen with the soundtrack and the sounds and the voice acting, extremely emotional and very well delivered by the actors. And it's just all forms this amazing package that it's been a complete blast for me. Now, I've already talked about the story a little bit as I was talking about visuals and all of that stuff, and all I can tell you so far is, again, I don't want to go into spoilers, but the story has been delivering in spades. And on top of it, you have the ATL thing that I've now gotten to see, which actually some people are upset over the fact that I keep pausing the cutscenes in order to read every single ATL entry, because I'm just curious about learning every single detail that I can about this world and its characters. And it's just like a library of knowledge that I keep watching and going back into. And to be honest, this should be something that every game does, because it's so easy for me to kind of like lose track of things. And this is something that I even remember from back in my Final Fantasy XIV days, where I would be playing through the game and something would happen in story and I would forget something. Because like, look, my memory is terrible. I have a terrible memory. I've mentioned this a million times. And then I would have to go and ask chat, who's this character? I forgot about this character. It's that guy that did the thing the other day and blah, 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 right? And then chat would tell me what it is. Now I don't need chat to tell me anymore, because I can actually just look it up on the ATL. And then you also have a character that actually tells you what the things are, right? So all of that has been extremely solid, and I definitely hope to see the ATL feature in more games, because I think it is an important feature for people to pay attention to. Now let me go ahead and skip at least a little bit of this, because there is something in that fight that I didn't want you guys to see. I don't think that it is a spoiler. It's probably been even featured in like trailers and whatnot, but you know, I don't want to assume, so we're going to be skipping that little bit there, and we're just back to some more combat and watching the beautiful vistas of Valisthea. But anyway, that's the story bit. And then we come on to what is the most important part, which is gameplay. I already told you guys that this is a spectacle fighter. The whole point is to kill stuff in a way that feels stylish and feels good to you. And there's like a bunch of tools that they give you. And in the gameplay that you guys are watching, I only have access to one set of abilities. Later in the game, something happens where you're getting access to additional abilities. So like right now, you see me using fire attacks. At the point that I'm at in the game, I can also use wind attacks. And you might be thinking, oh, at that point, it's going to get really complex. But the way in which they did it just feels so solid and intuitive that even I can work it out and do some pretty decent combos and fun combos with the tools that are provided to me. And like I said, I'm someone that kind of sucks at these games, and I'm still having a blast exploring the combat system. Now, the director of the combat system actually said this is somebody who's worked, I believe, in Devil May Cry, Dragon's Dogma, and whatnot. And I'm blanking out on his name. I'm sorry. I'm just doing this video off the cuff. But this dude said that he believed that this particular iteration of the combat system that he's worked on for Final Fantasy XVI is his masterpiece. And let me just tell you, it friggin' shows. Okay? Like, even if you're someone that usually doesn't like these kind of games, like, try the demo, because you might be surprised. Like, look at me just bullying this plant all over the place. Oh, and this skill. You guys saw the skill that I did right there? That skill actually has something that I wasn't even aware of, that it lets you parry spells. And when you parry spells, it empowers the skill. So you have parrying of physical attacks, then you have an ability that parries spells. And I was like doing this boss fight earlier today. Oh my God, so good. Every time the boss would shoot like up, any type of elemental attack at me, I'd just go like, psych, and parried it, and, throw the attack back like hyper powered at the boss. And on top of it, I think it also reduced the cooldown of the skill if you were to do a parry or Jesus Christ. It was so brutally satisfying. And it's like, I wish I could show you more in terms of gameplay, because the stuff that we are seeing here barely even scratches the surface. Like, let me see if I can just find... I'm going to show you guys the boss fight of when I fight that that dude. Because like, dude, you guys just have to see it. You just have to see it. Yeah, it's right here. We're skipping the little story bits so that it doesn't really spoil anything. And you guys are going to see this boss fight, because this just really shows you like the essence of why I personally like the gameplay so much. And it also will show you like whether or not this is something that you'll enjoy. Like, this is the Midnight Raven. So as you can see, you have a health gauge, and then you have like a yellow stagger gauge in the bottom. And that stagger gauge, let me actually pause here just to explain to you guys a couple of mechanics so that you properly understand the gameplay, right? We have our health pool right here. You can also see that this is in arcade mode, which is a feature of the gameplay. The game gives you replayability features, which is why I'm replaying this particular stage with my save file. And you'll even see me get graded here. The grading stuff doesn't really happen when you're playing it in story mode. But So to give you guys an idea about everything that is happening on screen right now, right? You have our health pool right here. You have the enemy's health pool right here. It has this stagger gauge. And the stagger gauge is very important because whenever you fully stagger him, you're going to get a massive opening where you can just unload combos for free for as long as you want. But there are more mechanics to it. So for instance, once you get to the middle of the stagger gauge, you're going to interrupt what the enemy is doing. So say they're charging a super powerful attack, but you see that the stagger gauge is close to the middle. You can keep pushing and interrupt that super powerful attack that the enemy is doing, which is really satisfying because you're completely in control. You have all of the information on screen. You can tell, oh, if I keep pushing, I'm going to break him. And then later into the game, you're going to be given a tool that once you break just midway through his stagger gauge, you're going to be able to exploit that and get, like, if you're skilled enough to pull, to do the thing that you need to do at that point, you're going to be able to gain an additional opening that's going to let you continue to pummel that stagger gauge. So there's a lot of interplay with the stagger gauge, and you have some abilities here that you can do. You can see that I'm like throwing a fireball, and at the same time I'm charging my sword with fire for an elemental fire attack. Like, there's just so much stuff that happens in the game that just feels really, really good. And then in here, you see that there's a menu here on the bottom, on the lower left-hand side. This is where you have like your consumables, or you can swap and you have access to Torgal, which adds a whole nother layer of complexity to the combat. So Sick is just like, okay, Torgal, attack the enemy. Then you have Heal, where Torgal kind of like gives you a little mini regen to whenever you're wounded. It doesn't really heal you much, but it just gives you a little bit of regen on health that you can still kind of like recover. And then you have Ravage. And Ravage is really cool because Torgal will actually launch certain enemies, not bosses and stuff like that. But like smaller enemies, he'll launch them, and then you can do follow-ups. So you can actually combo together with the dog. Or if the enemy is airborne and you do Ravage, he'll slam them down. So you can even like throw an enemy up into the air, do a couple of combos, and then tell Torgal to come in and kind of like dunk him into the dirt. There's like all of this complexity of moves that you can actually do. And while it seems hard when I'm telling it to you, the way in which they've done it with the controls, it actually feels very intuitive. And like I said, for like the 5th time, I suck at these games. And in this game, for some reason, it kind of works. I don't know what kind of black magic they're doing, but I really wanted to show you guys this fight because it's just like a really satisfying fight. Forgive the awkward jump cut, but I realized that in the previous video, I actually failed to complete the mission, which meant I wasn't going to be able to show you the footage that I wanted to show you. But anyway, this is the Midnight Raven boss, like I've told you guys. And the reason I wanted to show you guys this very specific fight is because it really showcases what I was talking about when it comes to some of the animation stuff that happens during boss fights. Now, this is not really a major character or anything like that, so don't worry about it. But as you can see, we're throwing out some fireballs. I'm trying to build on the stagger gauge there to actually capitalize on some damage. And I'm basically like exaggerating on my dodges, charging up my sword with fire. At the same time, still just trying to stay on the offensive at all times. But you still have to keep a decent amount of defensive moves. And you can see I actually landed a parry there, which was surprising. And I busted up the stagger gauge. I'm just going in for as much damage punishment as I possibly can. You can see the stagger gauge slowly building back up. This is when the enemy will eventually recover. And as he recovers, we're going to go straight into one of those QTE kind of things. But just like, look at the quality of animation here and how the camera just kind of like shifts. We're going into a clash, which is just mashing square. But look at this cinematography camera shift right here. He's going to sneak up behind us. Throw our sword away, throw us into the ground. What? Grab the blade almost in first person. Like, I just love how clean it was, the whole transition into this, and it just makes a beautiful set piece. And then we're back into the action seamlessly, right? Back into dealing more damage, dodging stuff. And by the way, this boss doesn't really do the best of jobs at showcasing that, but like those little lightning things that show up on the ground, there are fights where you build up more on that, and then it actually shows you like lines. It reminds you a little bit of Final Fantasy XIV raiding even. Not anything as overly complex as like, say, a extreme raid or a savage raid, but there are some mechanics there, which I personally like, and I'm very curious to see what these feel like when it comes to Final Fantasy mode. Like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be playing through the whole game in Final Fantasy mode, but like, how satisfying the combat feels at this point definitely makes me want to at least give it a shot. And in case you guys are struggling with the combat, you might want to try change the controls. There's like 3 control schemes, and I'm hoping that they add further control customization, which I believe is already something that they said they were going to do. But it just feels so good. Everything just kind of like flows in the middle of combat. Even when you're losing, it feels like the dance is done so very well. And unfortunately in here, he never really grabbed me because he does like this grab and then he throws you in the air and does a pile driver thing. But in here, I was being like too sweaty and I didn't even let him do it. But in arcade mode, he's slightly harder than in story mode because you have more limited resources. Like this just feels so good. And the way that I do that final hit with the flaming sword, it's just so good. Because like once you start getting into the rhythm of how the combat works, it just feels so great. Like that move right there is what does his little pile driver thing. Like this was just for some reason, out of all the boss fights that I've done so far, this is not like the best boss fight, but it was like one of the first ones where I was really, oh man, this just feels so nice. This back and forth that I'm doing with this dude. I don't know. You guys let me know what you guys think about that. I personally really liked it. But anyway, another thing that I would like to bring up when it comes to Final Fantasy XVI is like, with everything that I've played of the game so far, one of the things that I really wish I could do is have Clive have another job, so to speak. Because, you know, Clive is like this knight-type class. He runs around with a sword. He's got all of these elemental things and whatnot. But just reminding myself whenever I see a character wielding like a beefy axe, I'm like, bro, I wish I could play Clive as like a warrior from 14. Like, imagine a primal rend in this system, man. Look at these animations. Gorgeous. And you have so much of this, like, and even more impactful with some of the other bosses. It just feels so good. Look at these dodges. It's what I'm telling you guys. The animation is just straight up on another level. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, these QTEs are revolutionary. That's not what I'm going for. I'm telling you, like, just pay attention to what is happening on screen, the animations, and how good everything just kind of flows. I love it. I friggin' love it. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about it so far. If you've been playing Final Fantasy XVI, you're just going to be tuning in for the live streams. And if you are just tuning in for the live streams, do remember that you can subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that jazz. And yeah, if you guys have been playing, let me know what you think about it. If not, I hope you guys tune into the live streams and check it out. And we'll be having a lot of fun over the next couple of days. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong. Stay safe. Peace out.